Hey guys, my name is Lexi, and this is the Sincerely Self podcast. I'm so excited. Today I'm joined by Brit Costa. Brit, just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you've accomplished, and just what you've been up to.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here, and your pod is amazing. I love that you're here to heal and help. I'm a mother of five boys. Two are little angels in heaven, and that is aligned with my story and sharing my process of overcoming grief and healing and starting a business based out of those things. I have a few businesses. I have a full service salon, a medical spa. I'm married. I am Christian. I have a huge family and really just like to share my story. I like to be an open book and I'm very vocal on things that I care about. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. The one thing that I've noticed from your story, just kind of what I've read about you and a little bit of what we talked about before we started the podcast, is your story is just such a good example of being authentic and trusting the process. I think how you are so passionate about your family and the things that you love, I can tell it's kind of helped you in your life to get to the things that you want to accomplish. So I love that. I'm so excited. First thing I kind of want to touch on with your story is just some of the adversity that you've gone through and how you were able to flip that to the accomplishments that you have now.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. You actually brought like a small happy tear to my eye, because I don't think we hear it enough in our journey, and it's so special to be told, that we're doing good. And I think that all healing people like to hear that as well. So thank
Mhm.
you for that.
Of course.
Yeah. So I've had some adversity in my life. I am very on the spectrum of trying to be fair that we all have adversity in life, every single human, and no adversity is different than, um, something as simple as someone losing a dog as a child. They could see that as being as extreme as, the pain of going through a breakup or so I try to be very mindful that pain is pain and there's no comparable pains or adversities. So
Mhm.
I like to always acknowledge those people that are going through different adversities. So as a child, my parents did go through a divorce, which was quite challenging. Um, kind of found my way. And that was something that made me, I think, independent and at a younger age, and also learn things that I wanted in my life and things that I didn't want in my life. And as I got older, I decided, I actually, as a child, I was a little child model, and I love the industry. And when I was 18, I decided I wanted to go into the modeling industry. And I did that for about 5 years independently without an agency. I was very proud of myself because I was doing deals and I was on set with models from agencies and we're realizing, hey, I negotiated better deals than them. So I was very proud of myself for that. I did face things that are probably too sensitive in nature to talk about in the modeling industry, which made me want to leave the industry. But I realized while I was there that I was very business minded and I wanted to be an attorney. Went to college and got my bachelor's degree. And I was very proud of that because I was the first in my family to be able to do that. But leaving behind my dream, I didn't want to walk away from that because when I set my mind to something, I wanted to achieve it. But I realized that life was so much bigger than beauty. But beauty also is really important in life, but it's just not as important as I thought it was. And so I kind of left behind that dream, which was very soul crushing. But it was for the betterment of my health and future. And I was having trouble. I got married and wanted to have a family. We were having trouble conceiving, and we ended up doing IVF, and it was successful the first round. Very expensive. It's very painful. It's emotionally draining. You don't even know if it's going to work, and you sign this
Mhm.
contract, and it's like, well, you may not work, and it is what it is. And
Yeah.
so we did the IVF, which was a huge challenge. Not being able to conceive is a challenge because internally, I remember saying, how do people make babies for free? Like this is
Yeah.
what they taught us in school. Like you do this one thing, you get pregnant. Like and that just wasn't happening. And then you get into this mental state of why me? Why me? Like why can I not have this family when I have this loving home to provide? So
Yeah.
that was a really big struggle. And so it was successful. And we went through the journey of being pregnant with two little boys, Conrad and Princeton, and they were identical. So basically they split in half, and they don't really know why identicals happen, but it just happened. And
Hmm.
um, we were 3 weeks from delivering them, and I felt something was very off, and we went to the doctors, and there were no heartbeats. And that was the biggest trauma of my entire life. Knowing that death is inside of you, and the death of um, something you had waited your whole life for, baby dolls, and they're your babies. And then you start questioning, how could I have lost these babies? They were just moving around and they were kicking. And I have seen so many ultrasounds. Like, what happened? Did I kill them? Like, did I do them wrong? Did my body fail them? And absolute trauma to go through and shame that I experienced. Um, Obviously, people were compassionate, but all you feel is shame as a mother. Like, I
Hmm.
failed to bring them to life. And they developed a condition called twin to twin transfusion, which is something that identical twins can get. And they were supposed to be being monitored for it. And the doctors told me, we're no longer checking for this because they can't get it past this gestation, which we found out later is the complete opposite, is that you actually are more at risk for getting it. So they stopped checking. So had they been being checked, there are these plenty of interventions that are available. So there's these things that people carry with them with trauma, like I could have done more, and like the self blame, and like I had carried that because it was with science, there are preventable things. Without science, of course, that's the circle of life, and that's nature. But it was very hard to grieve something that was preventable. And you're angry and you go through all of these emotions. But after that, you have this trauma of an empty home, and you have this nursery, and you have infertility, and you have all of these things going on, and you're just trying to figure out how to get through the next day. It got really lonely, and I was finishing my degree at this time online. I was getting it online at Arizona State, and I was working for my father's company in habitat restoration online at home. And I was sitting in the same spot, staring at the same view. And I'm like, I need to get out of here. I can't do this. Like, I have to be more than this. And I remembered when I was younger, someone asked me, a very influential family friend, when I was telling them I wanted to be this big supermodel. And they said, but what do you want to do to help people? And that always bothered me because I'm like, man, like, well, that's my big dream. Like, what does it matter what I want to do to help people? And I started thinking, okay, how can I help people with my expertise? And I got in my car and I drove to a shopping center that was, had a bunch of spaces. And I just called and I said, hey, can I open a business? And they were like, okay, sure. And so I didn't have any background other than my experience of spray tanning that I had been doing for models on set. Um, I had had a tiny little studio that I skipped over because we're talking about adversity, and then I tell you my life story because it all
Yeah.
rolled into one.
Hmm.
But I had had a small spray tan studio. And then I just said, okay, well, if I focus on the spray tanning, we can bring in the hair, and we can bring in the nails, and we can bring in the facials, and we'll bring in the best of the best in a little boutique. And I can give the love that I couldn't give to my sons to my team. my community,
Hmm.
back to myself,
Yeah,
and we named it after them. So it's called the Princeton Co, which is the Princeton Conrad. So that is how I ended up with my business.
that's amazing. And I love that you were like, oh, it ended up into my life story, but it's so true that the trials and the adversity you go through, it really does play such a big part into what you end up doing, you know? I think it kind of reminds me like when I started this podcast, I had been going through like a pretty hard time with just a lot of different redirections and some loss. And I think those type of things, though they're really hard, they do grow us into a person who feels motivated to do something like that. Like for you to start your business and for me to start the podcast, it's like those things do have to go hand in hand.
I love that you were called to do that and you mentioned redirections because life is not what we plan it to be. Life has bigger plans and you can be angry at God sometimes, but what I learned is I had to turn into God in my specific spiritual journey. I know everyone has different beliefs, but for me, it was God. And I felt like God led me there. And it wasn't to be in the beauty industry, but it was to have community and to not isolate and to share my story and to make people feel loved and beautiful. And I think beauty is as little as smiling at someone as you pass them when you're out walking or saying a prayer for someone or beauty isn't just, I mean, a butterfly, I mean, it's not just hair, makeup, the whole thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's what makes people beautiful is when they're able to see the other beauties in life. And when we realize that we're not invincible, we become so much more beautiful because we realize that things are temporary and things are not promised. And
Hmm.
so I think that when you haven't had much adversity, you feel a bit more invincible and powerful, which is amazing. But when you realize that you are so susceptible to time and life and free will, I think you become so much stronger.
Yeah. And with loss, like I have experienced also a loss in my life, and is it's something that completely changes you as a person, you know? And I think it never goes away. It's always there, but it can guide you to your purpose because you feel motivated for you. You realize that time is so short and you feel motivated for the people who have passed, you know? It's beautiful that you touch so much on that and you see that as such a big reason you got to your purpose because I think it really can be.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss and losing anybody is just, it changes things and it puts
Yeah.
things on a new trajectory.
Hmm. And like, yes, sudden loss too, like the way that you lost your sons. Like I lost my great grandma who I grown up with. Like I had lived with her at the time of her passing and everything. And it's the ones that like you're just going about your day as far as you know everything is fine and then it just suddenly happens and it just completely changes your world. So I'm so sorry for your loss as well. And I think it's beautiful what you have turned your grief into because I think it's all about what you do with your grief on how you're going to go on past that.
Yeah, I agree. And gosh, there is a special place, for great grandmas and grandmas and mothers and
Mm.
fathers, and they are so influential. And losing that rock is just so hard. So I'm sorry you had to experience that, but yeah, using your grief for purpose is really important. And someone said to me once, I just think it's really great how you chose to, move forward. And we were sitting in the break room at my salon, and they were just telling me, I think it's really great that you move forward. And I looked at her and I'm like, I didn't have a choice. And she looked at me and she said, yes, you did. And it like hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh. I had a choice. I made the choice to not just move forward, but to make something out of it.
Yeah.
My brain was just convinced that this is just what happens and this is what people do. But some people are in so much pain, they can't get to the other side of choice. And I think knowing that we have a choice and how we're going to handle that grief is very powerful. And I'll never forget that moment. And now I do see that I made a very good choice. And um, it's good to be proud of yourself and find little things when you are in a process of grieving, healing, helping.
Yeah. That's honestly like that kind of was like a whoa for me too, because it is like sometimes if your brain is hardwired to just like get through things, you don't even realize that sometimes the grief can be so overwhelming for people that they don't see the other choice. They just see it as all consuming. So
Right.
that's amazing.
Yeah, you're just like and the more adversity you kind of go through, like I mentioned, you can be a little bit more hardwired to just this is just what I do. I survive and I get through things. Like I'm not a victim. I'm not this, and no shame on the victim, but maybe you were a victim
Yeah.
and maybe I was a victim, and it's okay to be one. And I feel like we're so hard as a society to ever use that term. But, I think that's why we lean on the survivor end of things, but it's
Mhm.
okay to have a weakness too.
100%. While we're kind of talking about mental health and just kind of perspective with your mentality, um, how have you used things like self-care to contribute to positive mental health and that perspective shift?
So, it's really interesting because self-care looks different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And I always joke that the shoemaker doesn't have shoes. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression before, but the
Mm.
shoemaker is so busy making shoes, they don't have time to make their own shoes. And
Yeah.
so um, I have completely natural colored hair. I have ends that need to be trimmed probably 5 months ago, facial in probably 5 months. I do get Botox. I haven't had Botox in a while, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because I'm about preventative beauty as well. So, back to the shoemaker doesn't have shoes. When it comes to self-care, when it comes to beauty services, if you ask anyone, I fully abandon it. I don't wear makeup on the regular, so this is a special occasion for you. I kind of was just like, oh, this is my jam. This is just who I am. But I had a breakthrough the other day and I realized, no, I'm not choosing to do this because I'm chill, like that I don't mind the way I look. I'm doing it because I'm hiding. And that was like a profound moment for me that I felt like if I start trying and putting myself back out there, if I start trying to wear like super cute outfits again, if I start trying to have makeup and my hair fresh and my skin glowy, I put myself out there and I've realized that I've struggled to accept compliments. So it's really interesting because everyone inside of my business has met me post loss. So they know this version of me that's like, okay, I have this beauty industry, but I tend to kind of show up in my sweatpants and my ponytail. And I'm like, that's my vibe. That's my self-care. But I told myself just the other day, no, like you have to stop that because how you feel on the outside channels to how you feel on the inside. If you're looking bomb and you're like, ooh, girl, oh, like you feel good on the inside. And it's not just vanity. It's not just because you want a compliment, but how you feel on the outside is is equally as important of how you feel on the inside.
Mhm.
And realizing that I'm still in shock about that. that I realized that the loss was 8 years ago. And I'm just now realizing that I've been hiding because I haven't wanted that attention on myself. And I know that's like a weird correlation, but I think when you're going through trauma and struggle, you don't want to bring any added attention to yourself. And then once you get comfortable, it's like you get cozy, you stop trying. It's almost like in a relationship where like you guys both get comfortable, you stop going on dates, this and that. Like it starts
Hmm.
to kind of fizzle out. So when I look at the self-care that I have been giving myself over these last 8 years, let's put aside everything I mentioned that I'm not doing. The things that I was doing, I was protecting myself. And I think that's the self-care that I was doing was I was creating a barrier of safety around myself to protect myself. And that was my way of loving myself. And of course, I would do things like bubble baths and coffee and spending time with my family and those types of self-care. But when it came to leaving my home and leaving my element, I was completely not taking care of myself. And I still haven't started, but I am saying to you today that I want to start doing that version of self-care that I preach and sell to people to take care of themselves. And I want to get on board. I have a beauty industry and I want to take advantage of it and embrace it and show that the external can work with the internal. And if you've got them both together, you can feel so good. And I'm excited for what that feels like. And I don't really know what that looks like, but I'm excited because, as I mentioned, most of these people, I think we have about 30 people in the business now
Hmm.
um, that are a part of the team. I want them to know who I was before as well and not just the new me. I miss the old me. I just would like if they could come together a little bit.
Yeah, and like coexist.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I've been in a similar spot with self-care because I talk about different self-care management ways on my podcast all the time. I talk about mental self-care, physical self-care, but if I'm like in the groove of just life and doing all the things that I need to do, I do kind of fall out of like, oh, I haven't done my roots in a while. I only wear my makeup like for things like this. I do the same thing. I'm up in a while.
Yeah.
I just fall into the groove of doing what I need to do instead of doing the things that I need to do to take care of myself, like going and getting facials and doing my hair and those type of things. And I think grief does play a big part in that. It's like you're kind of frozen in time. You don't even think to focus on those things. But I think when you have the physical, like the external and the internal self-care like aligned, that's when you're showing up as your highest self. So
Yes.
good for you to be implementing that. I'm trying to do the same thing.
I love that in your highest self. And no, I'm not bashing the El Natural. It helps save my skin, not having makeup on all the time. And, the no makeup movement, I'm all for that. Like people showing themselves because then there's the opposite extremes where people won't leave the house without makeup. And I'm
Yeah.
all for just a happy balance of combining a good version of the two
Hmm.
and getting a little glammed up sometimes, trying a little harder and not getting so comfortable living in that bubble shield that makes us feel safe, but pushing us out of our elements. And yeah, it's not just about, vanity. It has nothing to do with that. It's doing it for yourself and if you want to wear makeup, cool. If you don't, cool. But if things are becoming a consistent habit where you're doing things that you completely never did before, then that's like a behavioral shift.
Yeah, 100%. I love that you're being really authentic about and just upfront with your journey with self-care because I feel like on social media, it's easy for people to be like, "Oh, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do." but it's hard to maintain it for a long period of time. I think everybody struggles with that.
Oh,
But
totally.
mhm,
And owning a big beauty salon, I think it goes back to the shoemaker,
mhm,
and it goes back to the people that are maybe their moms at home and their stay at homes, and they give themselves every day, day in and day out to their children, and they just do not. I see it all the time, and I'm telling them like, you have to make time for yourself, and then I'm over here like not doing it. So
yeah.
even the beauty salon owner lady and self-care lady is not giving that portion. So you're not alone if you're going through that, but we're all doing the best we can and loving the best we can, giving pieces of ourselves away, but there is still, if you want it, that version of you that coexists with this version of you now. And the biggest takeaway is that I didn't want people to be like, oh, Brittany's brand new. Like, oh,
Mhm.
Brit, like, who is
There's
she coming in here? Like, in the heels and the clothes and the makeup and the hair. Like, that's what I don't want. And I'm like, if only you could see me before. And I wiped my social media of pretty much everything post loss. And I left up like modeling pictures and I post very little of my family. And sometimes
mhm,
I think like, I wonder if people judge me for why does she have these like old sexy pics up and why doesn't she post pics of her kids? And it's because my social media, I wanted it to be a reflection of my accomplishments, of kind of who I am and what I was. And I've lost so much of that person of who I was before that it's
mhm.
almost a reminder for me. And posting my children and putting them out, I just struggle a lot because I do still have a lot of followers from um, my old profession. And
Mhm.
so I do struggle to put them on totally different topic, but it's
Yeah.
just this like mixed battle of like, do I want their faces on there? Do I not want their faces? And um, where am I going with this? And I think that the way my social media is right now, which is like very little effort, very new content, it's just
Mhm.
exactly where I am right now as a person of trying to figure out which direction I'm going in my journey of healing and grieving because I haven't decided where I'm at. And I'm coming to terms with that I'm still knee deep in it. And I thought I was a lot further along, and I think we have to be real with ourselves and check in. And
Mhm.
these thoughts came in the bathtub, and like that's my little safe space. It's important to check in with ourselves and where we are and where we want to be and where we can step it up and just get real.
Mhm. Yeah, and with like the social media, I think everyone has their different comfort levels with it in a way. So like on what they want on their page, you know? And especially with like family stuff and like kids, I feel like it just kind of depends. Some people, the family aspect is very sacred. And so it does feel kind of strange, like posting them to whoever to see, you know? So I mean, I'm not a mom yet, but I have five younger siblings. And so I
Mhm.
totally kind of get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's options, you can go private, but
Mhm.
I am a business owner, and if I go private, then I can't have a public account. Well, you
Yeah.
can make another account. And I'm like, I already have 10 accounts. Like, I don't know. And I'm sure no one's sitting there going, when is she gonna, choose who she wants to be on social media? Like, no one
Mhm.
is doing that, but I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And just something that I've acknowledged.
Kind of on a different track from social media. How have you used your businesses to create a safe space for people to feel comfortable to be as authentic and open as you?
When I was building a brand and bringing in providers, I wanted to make sure that their values and aligned with mine, not necessarily like on a broad spectrum, but just
Mhm.
simply morally. Like, who are
Yeah.
you morally? And are your vibes good? And I would like sniff them out. And I know that energy, I believe in energy, I believe in transferring energy. I don't want any negative energy up near my space. And especially touching guests and whatnot. So we vibe, we check each other out, we see if we're a good fit. I'm always like, it's a two-way street. You know, if you feel comfortable, I want us both to feel comfortable. And I let them know peace is priceless, and there is no amount of money in this world that will disrupt my peace. So that's my main mission, and I tell them from the jump. So I think when you're working, you have your mission, which is peace is priceless. I want to give the love that I couldn't give to my team, my community, and making sure that they're a good fit and establishing a good team. Then they project your vision, your mission statement onto their guests. And I think it becomes a trickle factor from there. And I try to be open with the team. And there's been a few moments where, when you mentioned people feeling safe, feeling safe to be themselves. I had a mother. She was a stay-at-home. She hadn't had her hair done in 10 years. She came in. She looked so beautiful. When she was done, she couldn't believe herself. It was almost like what I was talking about earlier, like forgetting who you were. And she looked in the mirror, and I think the compliments were overwhelming her. And because she had been very vocal until the reveal. And I'm like, oh, like, is she not happy? It wasn't that. It was the attention. She was exactly who I am describing that I feel I have been being. And it was the attention. And she started to get kind of emotional. And her and I went and talked. I happened to be there. Her and I went and had a conversation. And, she just said, I just have not seen myself in so long. And that word seen is so big right now. Like, I see you. When someone says, I see you, that is like so powerful.
Mhm.
And people say, I want to be seen. They're not saying they want to be like, I see you. They're saying, like, I want to see all of you in your core. And she saw herself and who she was before motherhood. And motherhood is beautiful, but we still get to be who we are innately and are things that defined us before motherhood. And we hugged, and I just was like, stay here. I just grabbed a bag and I'm putting candles and I'm putting this and I'm putting it. And I just was like so overwhelmed with just like that we could do this for her was the greatest gift. And I gave her the bag and I just said, please don't stop taking care of yourself. And that was so important and special to me. And I think about her all the time. And sometimes I'll go and I'll stand in the back and I'm watching, you know, 15 chairs. I don't even know how many chairs we have, maybe more. And they're all talking, they're laughing, people. And I'm like, I built this, we built this. And it takes my breath away sometimes to see every connection that is taking place because of the decision that I made to get in my car that day and drive to the center. And I have chills right now because the women that I've met that have been a part of my brand that I've seen elevate their careers, the jobs that I've been able to provide, the friendships that have been created, the motherhood, the connection, the group, the community. Now to 8 years where people are saying, "Oh, you own the Princeton Co." I know that versus like 2 years in, like even 5 years in, you own the what? It's like people know who we are now, and because of my morals, my standards, my vision, and what we provide, we have a reputation now, and that reputation is like we are the best. We care. I know some business owners, they're burnt out, and you know what, I can't blame some of them, but I am so proud of myself and my team for getting to the spot where I can say we are the best at what we do because of how we do it and how we love and how we give and take care of other people. And I'm so thankful for all of them for getting us here, the guests, the employees, the team, the people that have supported us. Even my husband, I had the lease on my nightstand for 2 weeks, and I said, I can't sign this because if I fail, those boys' names come off the building. I'm gonna lose them again. And he said, if you don't know, you'll always wonder. So just do it. And he inspired me to take that chance on myself And if he hadn't done that, I don't know if there would have been a Princeton Co, Princeton Conrad. And as far as the business. So I'm very grateful for him being my rock. And when we had our loss, I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna do this. And he's a man of few words, my husband. And he said, was an athlete, a professional athlete, and he said, they've athletes, they've got a lot of really good core values instilled in them. And
Hmm.
he said, Britt, I've got big arms and I'm gonna carry you. And that like took me like he said it and he did it and he's continued to carry me through it. And then I saw by chance in the Bible something I'm going to totally tear it up, but God says, I basically have big arms and I will carry you, in other words. And I'm like, he was my savior when I needed it, like physically, while I had my husband carrying me, God was carrying us. And that was like so special.
That's amazing. I love how you have brought God into this conversation because I think myself as well as I've gotten closer to choosing myself and what I think my purpose has been, it's always kind of leaded me back to God, always. And thinking back on adversity, like when you realize God's part in it, it makes you trust in him more. Like this is just part of God's plan for me. Like I know everything's going to be okay. I know I'm going to be able to move past this because I have God carrying me. So I think that's a beautiful thing that you were able to have your husband as that physical representation of that for you.
There's just things that in my life can't be explained,
Hmm.
by science. I mean, 4 months after my loss, we were pregnant naturally, and the infertility was on the male end. So you went from having a 1% chance, and I'm pregnant 4 months after this loss, and now I have to love this baby. And I don't want to love this baby. I want to love my sons, and I don't have any love to give them. It's not that I don't want to love this child, but I just cannot do it. Like I am empty. Like I have barely love to give myself. And
Yeah.
I left that hospital on the twins' birthday, exactly a year later, holding my son. Those beautiful angels said, you're not allowed to be sad today. You're leaving with a gift. And we made that gift for you. And no one can convince me otherwise. And that baby that I left with, that I would like sit there and let breathe in my face and just feel his breath because I was convinced I would never have a baby breathing ever. Even in my C-section with my first son that survived,
Hmm.
Roman. And I just would let him breathe on me. And you go through this state where you truly start to believe the lies that are created. And it would have been so easy to be mad at God. And I was. And I remember when I got home from the hospital after losing the twins, I was screaming in the backyard like an absolute psychopath. How could you do this to me? Why? How could you? Like at the sky, I was angry at God. And a hummingbird flew right in front of my face. And a hummingbird is the symbol of my grandmother.
Hmm.
And it just like fluttered right in front of me and was like staring at me. And I felt its power come into me. And I looked at it and it flew away. And I said out loud, well, you didn't answer me, but at least I know you're listening. And I still was sassing God. And I was like very sassy, but I knew right then and there, we don't have the answers, but you're listening and he's going to listen. And that was the moment that I decided I was going to stay towards the light because what that anger could have done to me,
Yeah.
that could have turned me into a monster and it could have just grown into such an ugly thing. So that experience and having that just spiritual moment and all of these things, what I said, like there's some things that just cannot be defined.
Yeah.
And you know in your heart, I mean, the infertility being overcame, leaving on the birthday, the humming. I mean, I could go on. Like I call them bumblebees, the twins, because like songs that I haven't heard in years would just come into my head and play, like how Bumblebee would on like Transformers. Uh,
Yeah.
and they would speak to me through songs. And so, um, if I tell people that are going through loss, if you're open to s- connecting to the signs, they'll come. I'm
Hmm.
a firm believer, and everyone I talk to that has been open to it tells me their special little story of how things have connected. So if I guess if someone is going through something like that, be open to the signs because you'll miss them if you're angry or if you're not willing to see them.
Yeah. I love that because you're so right. Everybody who has gone through loss has their own little story like that that can't be explained. Like leaving on their birthday. I believe there's no such thing as coincidences. So that's a beautiful thing. And I really think the veil is a lot thinner than we could even comprehend. Like, I think when loved ones leave us in physical form, they never truly like leave our sides, you know? I think if we're open to it, they will send us as many signs as we need. I kind of have like a little story as well with my grandma. Like when I was in college, I completely changed my major. I was going into education. And then I was just like, I don't know if I want to be a teacher my whole life. Like I love working with kids, but like I don't know. I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to do in life, like for my whole life. And so I stopped and I started looking into being a life coach. And I remember just like thinking in my head, I'm like, God, like, is this, I just worry if people are proud of me. I just worry if she's proud of me. I'm worried if you're proud of me. I'm worried if I'm doing the right thing. And then I had a neighbor come up to me a few months later, like on Christmas. And he was like, I had a dream of your grandma. She told me I had to find you. And she said she's proud of you and that you're doing the right thing. And I was
Oh,
like, I never told anybody like besides God that that's what I needed to know. And so I think stories like that, it keeps you looking towards the light because it's when you feed into the anger, you don't experience those type of things.
oh my gosh, I'm so emotional. I have chills. Like you gave me chills. That's so beautiful. And I'm sure she's so proud of you. And you definitely made the right decision. I see how passionate you are about what you're doing, the way that you care to listen, the way you want to help people. And she has to be so proud. And the amount of chills that I had listening to that, like I feel that. And when you're empathetic and when you're connected and like you said, um when you're open to these things, you can give so much more love because of it too. So I just think that you using your platform, your voice to share those experiences, the unexplained and the affirmations and um, it doesn't have to be so black and white. And some people, like I mentioned in the beginning, maybe it's not your God, but maybe it's your spirit guides or it's your whatever. But believe in the beauty of what we are is more than what we are because it's so complex and so great and have some faith in your world is what I would hope because without faith, it is hard to get through adversity and you can be a very angry person or you can be missing out on so many things.
Hmm. Thank you. And I love how you created a whole business based off of just the love that you want to be able to give. And I think it's beautiful that your sons sent you your other son. Like it's as if they were like, no, like you're gonna be a mom. You're gonna have somebody on this side that you can take care of while we help you. So I your story gave me chills. I was like, that is such a beautiful thing. Like it's amazing what you can do with your grief when you see the lighter side of it.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I didn't want to leave with a baby on their birthday. I wanted to be mad and angry and sad still, even then, a year later. And I was frustrated, like, oh my gosh, like their birthdays are 3 days apart because I had a Roman the 11th and the twins were the 14th.
Hmm.
And it wasn't what I wanted. It was just the plan and the plan through all of it. It unfolded. And the next day, the twins were born on October 14th, and the next day is Infant Loss Awareness Day. So I'm
Wow.
in the hospital, and they're like, "Oh, hi, are you gonna light candles today?" And I'm like, "It's the next day," and I'm like, "Light candles? Why?" "Well, it's Infant Loss Awareness Day, and you light candles. Everyone does this wave of light around the world at 7 p.m." And I'm like, "Oh, I am so glad that I could join this club just the day before." And so, my mom ran to like the CVS because it's supposed to be at like 7 p.m. and it was like 6 o'clock, and grabbed
Mm.
these little stinky little candles, that they had there. And we got two and we lit them in the hospital. And I just remember being mad. Like, I don't want to be participating in this infant loss. Like, I want my babies. And it's hard every year because it feels like, okay, their birthday. It's like I have my son Roman's birthday, and then I have the twins, and then I have infant loss awareness. That it is emotionally draining. But um, and the month of October feels heavy still for me because
Yeah.
and overwhelming to navigate because I want to show up for him. And I have two other beautiful sons, Malcolm and Sebastian. I'm referring to Roman so much just simply because of the closeness of the birthdays. But leaving that first birthday present they gave me was the best gift, and I am so grateful. And I believe that my boys, my breathing boys, were all a part of my healing journey.
And having to join in on that the day after, I'm sure was so, yeah, mentally challenging. It's like you're not even fully processed the loss yet, and you have
No.
to go and address it like that. So,
Yeah, and we had people, they have like an infant loss march and that they do on that day, and people were writing their names, which was really nice, and it kind of perked me up. But it's like this, no, I don't want to be in your club. And on that, it sucked because I had people now coming to me, which they were like, "Hey, you seem like you're doing okay in your journey. I know someone that just lost a baby." And I'm like, "Okay, okay, like they're like, what should I do? What can I get them? Like, how can I show up? Can you talk to them?" And I'm thinking, man, like I am still drowning, but because
mhm,
they see me up walking, experiencing life and surviving, they saw me as someone that could help. And because of my nature, I would show up and help, and I would do it a lot. But it became too much at a certain point where I
oh,
had to like leave the support groups behind because I had these babies to take care of that needed me,
mhm,
and they actually they needed my body, they needed my mental. And I think it's important that people know they're allowed to disconnect too if they want to disconnect. And I felt like a traitor at first because these are the people that got me through as a group. um, some of my like online groups are like the hashtags and the people that were waiting for every single post that I would make because I would post religiously about my feelings, my emotions, like dear diary. And then I just was like, who am I doing this for? And it just felt so overwhelming. And so I think it's okay to take breaks, is what I'm getting to in that journey, or just saying, look, I am so grateful that you would think of me in this time, but I am still in this journey where I'm just not emotionally available to help. And please don't let this affect you in any way. I don't want to like hurt your feelings. I'm fully okay. But it's, you have to set some boundaries because you got to
mhm,
keep your cup full enough to take care of yourself. And especially because I was pregnant a lot these last few years. I mean, I had 4 pregnancies in 8 years. So being pregnant and then people asking you about um, infant loss is very overwhelming because even though I did have that success second pregnancy, I continued to feel like I would lose the others because it's the lies that we believe, right? So I also realized not even the lies, how fragile life is and that nothing is promised. So going through the other pregnancies with Malcolm and Sebastian, even after I had Roman, I still didn't believe that I would see their breathing faces until it happened. So it's just something that happens to us and we go through it and we have to listen to ourselves. But we show up when we can and we speak on it when we can. And if you can't, it's okay to set your boundaries there too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when externally after a loss or a big adversity, if people see you physically doing fine, like, yeah, you're going about your routines and they don't know the mental challenges you're facing from still recovering, they turn to you because they think you're strong. And I think, yeah, it definitely takes a mental toll because you're like, I haven't even processed this. Like I don't know how to help. So I think that's amazing that you're able to set those boundaries because I think a lot of us have some people pleasing tendencies deep down. And so we worry about setting certain boundaries like that out of fear of like hurting their feelings or anything like that. So I think it's amazing you're able to be like, listen, like this is nothing about you. This is just what I need to do for my healing journey.
Absolutely. And I love that you say like people pleasing because what I find is that anytime I'm asked, like, oh, how many kids do you have? I have an internal battle like in my brain that happens every time. Do I
Mm-hmm.
say five? Do I say three? And then it's really difficult. And I've kind of gotten to the point now where I just say three because I've noticed that if I say five, they're like, oh my gosh, like what are their ages? And then I have to say, well, the two, they're in heaven. And then instantly their faces drop. And then now I'm consoling them. And then they're literally, they look like they want to go in a hole. And it's not every time, but I would say about like 80% of people, they're
Yeah.
like, why did I just do this? Like, oh my gosh, this woman, like, and then you're consoling them. It's okay. No, it's totally okay. But it's not okay. Like what happened wasn't okay. It's okay that they're asking, but it's just you end up consoling other people through your grief. And that is one thing that I've realized is that a lot of people in the grief journey end up having to console others when they're, healing. So I just
Mhm.
kind of decided I'll say three. And then if we develop a further relationship, we'll talk about the five because I don't want to have to console someone or make someone feel like they made a bad decision asking me how many kids I had.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's just if you're always answering it with some sort of question where it leads to like, oh, and you end up consoling them, it's just sometimes feels like you're focusing so much on the loss instead of your recovery and your healing from it. And when you're constantly having to address the loss that you had and then experience those people's feelings for hearing it for the first time, I'm sure it got so draining. You're like, I'm sure you don't even really want to be talking about it in that moment.
Right. Yeah. And you start to feel like a traitor. Like at first, like I would feel like a traitor. Like I said, I'd have that like mental, like, what number am I gonna yell out today? And I think you learn as you go.
I think we have both experienced I think when you've experienced kind of similar situations, you are able to kind of like bond on a level with it and just like have an understanding with each other on it. So I think it was awesome like getting to talk to you about all of that.
Yeah, you're so right on the bonding. There's this frequency that comes with it.
Hmm.
And, when you reach that, not that you want to be in that club, but when you reach this level of I am not invincible. You can empathetically connect on this wavelength and be more authentic in your conversations and your interactions. We're looking at computers right now, but I can like actually feel like a heart connection. So,
Yeah.
um, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
I think energy doesn't lie, and I'm glad that we were able to be on the same frequency with it because yeah, even though it's over technology, you can feel like the connection there. So that's amazing. I'm going to link all of Brittany's links in the description of this episode so you guys can go and check her out. And I'm going to link her personal as well. She has a Q&A on there just kind of talking about her adversity that she's gone through. So if you guys want to go check that out, I will also have that link down below. And I will see you guys next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me.